Welcome to the Caerusnet Podcast. Here, you'll learn how to stay connected in the local business community and become that person others get to know, like, and trust, and refer to. And now, your host, Caerusnet founder, Steve Zyskowski.
So welcome to the Caerusnet Podcast. Today I've got with me Jonathan Hayward. Jonathan's been a Caerusnet member since May of 2017, joined the Brighton Wednesday 10 o'clock team and has been a heartbeat on that team ever since. It's kind of a long overdue podcast to have Jonathan on. So Jonathan, welcome. Thanks for being with us today.
My pleasure, Steve.
Let's jump straight into it. We're going to talk about some of the things that I normally ask most Caerusnet podcast guests, but I've also got a few curveballs for you. First question is real simple. I like to go down memory lane a little bit. I've joked with you about it a little bit that, you courted Caerusnet for a little while before you pulled the trigger and got married. And I'm good with that. But I want to know, who was it that told you about Caerusnet? How did that go down where you felt like, okay, this is something I should check out? Because each one of us kind of needs to be sure that when we tell people about Caerusnet, that it falls on open ears. So how did that go down for you?
When I first found Caerusnet, it was my second time getting into the insurance industry, and I understood the value of growing a business by referral already. But coming to Michigan, I needed to start from scratch, no book, no connections, literally building from the ground up. And I had experience with a similar but differently branded networking group in the past. I was looking for something like it, and I even checked with them, and they were full. But believe it or not, I first found you on Google. I remember I reached out to you, and what blew me away was within like less than an hour, you responded back with a text message, and we got on the phone, and you were telling me about it. And you're right. I put some thought into it. I recall I visited 2 different teams. I met with members from both of them. I wanted to make sure this would be as much as a good fit for the team, also a good fit for me before I dove in and joined. And after picking one and diving in, it has been one of the best business decisions I have ever made.
Well, I tell you, I really appreciate that. And I promise the viewing audience, Jonathan has not been paid for this interview. But but let me ask you this. Knowing that you've been in, and we'll just call it out, it's B&I, and that's no problem. We're not, it's Caerusnet. We're not there trying to tell people not to join B&I or that B&I doesn't have value. Of course it does. But B&I and Caerusnet are 2 different pizzas. We're both pizzas. We just have, and we've got some similar toppings, but we've got some special ingredients. So what would you say for you has been the special ingredients that have made the most difference for you at Caerusnet versus what you experienced in B&I?
I've had 3 different things that I learned about Caerusnet as I joined and got into the system that have been really, really pleasant things to discover. One is that I don't have to put as much work in myself. I've not been asked to join a committee. I've not had to put tremendous number of volunteer hours in. It's run by you, a facilitator with every group that's out there. I show up, I participate, but I don't have to put extra time into running the meeting itself, which is nice to save time as a business and focus on growth rather than on just extra maintenance to keep that growth machine turning. Second, you're very realistic in your expectations from your members. There is no hard line of you can only miss so many, and if you don't send somebody in your place, you can lose your seat. You've been understanding of moments that have popped up over the years of whether it was a health issue or whether I had a client with an emergency that needed help at that moment. And you've done a great job letting the membership know when members have checked in that they're paying attention and managing their membership well, which has been fantastic. And then finally, the amount that you've encouraged people to connect, not only in the meetings and in the one-on-one trust builder meetings that we have, but also in other outings, whether that's the annual breakfast, whether it's the golf outing. We've gotten together socially. It's allowed me to really get to know the people and, in effect, feel like I've developed an extended work family rather than just business contacts. And it has been such a more pleasant, casual, but also effective way to build those relationships and have business flow that it's been a great discovery path for me.
Okay, well, I sure appreciate hearing that. I'm going to keep baking those pizzas then, just the way you like them, because that's the only way it's the only way I know how to do it. And doing this business for 16 years, I've got to ask myself, can I do things in such a way that has the least amount of wear and tear on me? Because if your
Mm,
leader goes into a dark place and isn't enjoying it anymore, everybody will feel that. So I've got to do things based on just how I feel about treating people well. And also, like you said, expectations. Um, I've had some people that were low performers for a little while, but with some right encouragement and other things, started to step things up and
mhm,
got some traction. So, and the other thing that's good for you, knowing that you don't have to be the next president or the educational coordinator or sit on membership committee or do any of that stuff, which is a good thing because when you're meeting with a new client, it's not a short conversation. So I would assume your capacity for time has got to mostly be full most of the time.
mm.
And having something like that would be a real interruption in your business, which I don't want to put on you. I want you to keep giving your clients that unencumbered time and attention. So let's transition and talk about that. You're in insurance. Everybody that owns a home has a car. You provide something that people need, and in some cases are required to have if they have loan arrangements or other things. And yet you're one insurance agent that I have on 6 different Caerusnet teams that I facilitate. So I get to see kind of the whole big picture of how different agents approach their team. I might say you might be one of the most successful in generating business through the network. And yet it's not as though I see everybody passing you referrals. How are you able to get the success that you are through CirrusNet? I know Scott Lee is a great supporter of you and sends wonderful referrals. He's consistent,
Mhm,
but I
mhm.
hear members raving about your amazing job reviewing. So my thought is something must happen in your trust builders with people, or they hear enough about you and they go, "This guy's got to look at my stuff." I mean, how does this stuff get to you, or maybe it's not getting to other agents?
You know, I've put some thought into that, and a lot of the results that you see are the result of some intentional choices I've made in how I interact and how I market to other businesses. And I will say right off the bat, I actually steer clear of asking members of the group if they want me to help them with their insurance. And I'll even tell them, I'm not going to ask you if I can do this for you. If you come to me, by all means, I'm not going to say no, but I'm here to work about how you and I can help each other refer to external, each other's clients and other contacts, not necessarily each other. But invariably, people have ended up, one, appreciating that there's no pressure there. But I will tell you, if you look at the thing that sets me apart from most of my peers, it's a few different things. One, I genuinely care about making sure someone's insurance will work. Yes, I'm here to grow a book of business, which effectively means I need to keep things going from an essentially sales business. But at the same time, one, I've always held a strong belief that my next customer will find me if my existing customers are very happy with me. It happens. I can spend my time serving my clients, not having to find them. That's where referral marketing works well for me as a system anyway. But second, I've got a few key advantages behind me as an insurance broker. Not only do I have multiple carriers I can shop, so as I'm describing for people what I do, that they start to realize, oh, he's probably got a high likelihood of finding me a good rate because he's got all these different companies he can check. Not to mention the time he'll save me because I don't have to do this 12 times myself to have him check on 12 of these for me. But second, I take the time to educate people and not to the point where I need them to become experts, but just like a good doctor will ask you for details and then say, based on what you're telling me, here's what I would recommend as a course of treatment to get you on the right path. For me, it's essentially here's what I would actually suggest for you is an appropriately customized safety net, because that's really what insurance is. It's a financial safety net. And there's details that make the difference between one, whether the company is going to try to deny every claim or not, and everything's got to be done airtight, which I always ensure it is. And then two, there's unique circumstances that if you apply the appropriate option, it helps. To translate into more simple terms that everyone can relate to, if you like to tow a camper, then you need a vehicle with a tow hitch. But if you don't tow a camper, you don't need to pay for the tow hitch option on your car. There's tons of parallel examples to that in the insurance world that I take the time to figure out. I often tell people, if you hear horror stories of insurance not working, it's usually because either an important detail for that person was missed or something on the application was not accurate. And if you can solve those two problems, then you know the insurance will actually work as expected. Then it's just a case of, now that we know exactly where you want to go on vacation, if you want to pick an analogy, now it's which airline has the best price ticket after we know where and when and what kind of vacation we're booking. And that's essentially the process I help people through. And I think when a lot of members have heard that, they've said, wow, that's a different approach that I'm used to seeing. I'm curious to try that out and see what he finds. I'd say there's a few times where I'll tell someone, honestly, the rates where you're at are amazing, stay put, but here's the list of things to go fix so it actually works the way you want it to. And then come back and see me the next time you want to shop because prices change again. And invariably, if they haven't gone with me right away, they've come back to me. I've had members that have come with me. Something in their circumstances changed. Another carrier was more competitive. They went there, and sure enough, they came back about a year and a half later. It's been a wonderful cycle when I see that happen. So, long story short, I do things differently. That's your TLDR version than most of my peers do.
Yeah, you're leading with value is what it boils down to. And you're
Mm,
also placing the relationship with your fellow CRSNet member above your desire to grow your book. You're valuing the relationship and then you're providing value. And so I think those are
mm,
key elements that are differentiators for you. And then the other thing that I'd like to pick up on that you said was that what you see is that part of why you're working so hard to take care of these people in the first place is because of your strong belief that should you do good work for them and they know somebody that happens to
right.
that they think would benefit by speaking with you, that's more likely to happen as a result. But there are things that I know you say and do when you are calling on a referral or somebody reaches out to you and says, Jonathan, so and so said I should reach out to you. I know what you say when it talks about kind of driving that referral relationship. Can you share with the audience how that sounds?
Absolutely. I'll tell someone that my goal is not only for you to be so happy with me that you'll decide to get insurance from me and no one else, but that you'll be comfortable enough recommending me to anybody that you know if they ever complain about the insurance they have now. That's one of the things that I'll say. I mean, even when I first meet someone, I'll frequently open the conversation and ask, who can I thank for referring you to me? And it kind of plops the idea in their mind that, I guess he gets a lot of people that come to him by referral, which is honestly, it helps my business give a good first impression. And second, it kind of gets people in the mindset to thinking, oh, that means I could refer to him too. And sure enough, I can actually tell you I've tracked, at this point, I've hit a chain of 11 referrals from one CRTS referral 7 years ago that has worked its way from the person to the next, to the next, to the next, to the next, to the next. It's one of the most wonderful ways to grow my business when I get what I consider to be the biggest compliment I can get. And I'll even tell them that if I'm not going to ask you to go find people to send me for business, but if a chance lands in your lap that you want to help somebody, I take it as the biggest compliment I can get. Anyone you care about, give him my name and number. If you don't care about him, don't give him my name and number. But if you do, go for it. And by the way, they laugh just like that. It keeps it low key. It keeps it fun, and it'll help them kind of remember, okay, I can do that. And then, sure enough, 6 weeks later, 6 months later, 2, 3 years later, I'll get an email or a phone call. My brother said I should talk to you, and that just snowballs. Once it starts, it takes off and runs. So it's been a blast.
So verbatim, it was my hope and goal is to do such a good job for you that should the opportunity arise, that you wouldn't hesitate wanting to share me with those you care about. And So that's something specifically, you say it verbatim, like if I could step into your phone call at that time and say the exact same thing. So let me put this out there. If you're somebody out there that is not saying these things, are you helping or hurting yourself? So Jonathan, let me ask you,
Mm-hmm.
how would you be hurting yourself by not saying those things?
It would be the equivalent of saying I'll open a savings account for a one-time only interest rate, and that's it. And then it doesn't multiply on itself again and again and again and again. We've all heard of exponential growth as a huge multiplier over time. And I believe that to be true in not just your bank accounts, but also in the size of your business. And I would rather let my work, one, speak for itself, but two, the more that I can keep it in people's minds that this can be a continual chain, you can pay it forward. I know that as a business, instead of just saying, all right, over the course of the year, and if I get one referral a week, great, that's 50 people I can potentially offer my services to. But if each of them do the same, and meanwhile I had another 50 come in, well, that just doubled. And then the next year it quadruples. And next thing you know, you can't even keep up with the referrals you're getting, and you have to hire someone to help you, which is exactly what happened to me a couple of years ago. So it's a wonderful opportunity for exponential growth if you can get your clients to send people to see you. Happy customers make the difference every time.
Jonathan, if you did the same work for them, had the same conversations about, figuring out how
Mm,
they're using the assets you're looking to insure,
mm,
doing all of that deep digging, providing them with a great policy that's going to work for them, and that's the mechanics of what you did, but you didn't have those conversations or say those
mhm,
things about relationship and referrals. If you're just sitting there assuming that if you do good work for people that they're going to refer you.
mhm.
Do you find a flaw in that thinking?
I think I might get at most 20% as many referrals come along. It at best, probably closer to 10%.
There's a
And
psychological factor to asking, isn't there? There's a
yeah,
psychological factor to stating intentions and what you hope to gain from taking such great care of them, right?
hmm there is. Because it kind of gets them thinking, geez, at some point I'd really, I want to do something back for him. And he's showed me a way that I can. So and I'll look for that. And I guarantee anyone listening to this podcast in the next 12 months, there will be at least three people that complain about insurance around you. At some point in that 12-month window. And if you're my client, I'm hoping that you'll send at least two of those three to me in practice. Uh, and when that happens, and then they do the same, and then all of them do the same, it snowballs beautifully. But that only happens if I can get you to realize this is something I can do. He's okay with this. I'll even tell them, you don't have to ask my permission later to give out my info. I'm giving you that permission now. Okay, he's serious about this, and that combination has seemed to work, at least for me. And I'm convinced if I didn't put that effort in and didn't plant those seeds, they'd never grow.
Yeah. So thank you. I've really wanted to kind of drill into everybody how important it is, even when you're not comfortable and you're not used to saying these words, you're short-circuiting your own success by not
Hmm.
just learning how to say things in your own authentic voice to have that type of a relationship exchange with your clients. It's absolutely critical. It's absolutely critical. So Jonathan, I know that when you started this business, it was just instant success and no struggles, no challenges at all. Of course, I'm kidding. One of the
Hmm.
things we talked about at our Caerusnet meetings this week was a report that we were looking at that talked about the percentage of small businesses in the United States that are no longer in business after 10 years. And that was this graph right here. And it's pretty sad because when you look at a graph like this, everybody starts out 100% open for business. But at the end of 10 years, what you find is only one-third of those businesses, regardless of industry, are going to be around to still serve customers. And, business is business, but at the end of the day, people had lives completely changed because the business they set out to do failed. And business is one of these simple but not easy type things. You have to be so focused and determined and be willing to learn, be willing to be coachable, be willing to be willing to fail and learn, because really it's the only way we learn is failing. But we looked at this graph and we talked about this, and we also talked about this thing called the emotional cycle of change. And this was a graph that was introduced to me by Denise Roberts in Caerusnet, but it's a very popular chart among people in the business coaching space to help their clients see themselves in the game, see themselves, right? Like anytime you start something new, you start out with this uninformed optimism. Things are going to be so great. Everybody's going to be lined up to get my lemonade around the corner. But then you open the lemonade stand and it rains the first day. The next week, cars just drive by, nobody stops. So now you have informed pessimism. And then if you don't do something about it, right then and there, you fall into the valley of despair. And you're either going to fail, or you're just going to keep repeating these three things, or you're going to overcome and ultimately get to the stage 5 of success and fulfillment, which is where Jonathan is at today. Jonathan is at that success and fulfillment stage in his business, but you didn't start out that way. So I want you to share that little story about how you started. But then the other thing too is we have to understand this emotional cycle of change is ongoing always. You were a Liberty Mutual quote unquote captured agent for many years. And then that changed into a new agency that allowed you to offer, different products and services as well too. So you had to go through those changes as well, right? It's always going on. So share with the audience what you shared with me regarding the emotional cycle of change and how you saw yourself in that.
When you talked about that the other day, I looked at that and said, okay, that sounds like you were watching the first 6 months of my working in the insurance industry and the process I went through. So the fun story for our listeners, before I got into insurance, I was working for 2 years in retail sales, selling appliances. Or should I say people purchased appliances and I sold warranties and packages and installations and so forth. So when I first decided I wanted to take my sales skills out of appliances, I cast a fairly wide net. When I saw an opening for an insurance sales rep at Liberty Mutual, I'm not kidding. The thought that crossed my brain was, well, I've succeeded selling warranties for 2 years. How different could insurance be? Oh my, did I have a lot to learn. That said, I got in, I went through training, I went live. I was all excited, very much the uninformed optimism level. And then honestly, I struggled a lot. In fact, if you looked at my sales numbers and how much I was growing a customer base, 4 months in, I had barely achieved 1 month quota. That's how rough of a start I got to. If you were someone casting bets on staff, you would not have bet on me staying around. And I had a hard 6 month deadline number I had to hit to keep my job. Well, that was right coming out of that valley of despair. For me, really, it was 3 months in where I'm looking at this going, this isn't working. I have to change how I'm doing this. Something needs to be different. And I quite literally shifted my marketing approach into a quality-driven, quality of service, referral marketing-based structure instead of just essentially asking everyone I knew if they wanted to do insurance now. And that was what started to turn the corner for me. Now, that valley of despair stretched on a little longer for me for a unique reason. Even when the numbers started churning, until I actually cleared that 6 month hurdle, I was quite nervous because 5 days after that 6 month deadline was my wedding. So talk about pressure to make it happen, right? We all have realities in our work-life balance that change how we feel about running a business. And I was about ready to potentially call it, but that started to climb. I'm like, you know what? I'll keep going. I'll keep applying this. And sure enough, I got past that mark. And at that point, I was running really fast. I did like 5 months worth of quota in 2 months. Less than that, actually, and then just kept going with that same style, and it has just snowballed upwards from there. And it's interesting, you talk about the other changes in my career. Every time I've had a new idea or a new product or a new way to talk about things or a new carrier that comes along, I honestly get a miniature version of that every time. And I've seen so many, honestly, of my peers that when things don't work exactly as expected and they hit that little dip, sometimes they give up and just go back to what they were doing before. instead of continuing to work to figure it out and come out the other side. So that the takeaway message is that no matter what business we're in and what stage we're in, anytime we do something new, we're going to go from excited to wondering if we made the right choice or not. And if we can push through that and find a way to work smarter, not harder, and apply that new thing, I think we can all find a measure of success and figure out where do we fit this in to the rest of the plans for our life or our business.
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome. I love hearing that. Appreciate you sharing that as well too. Kevin Sabaski on our team, he's got a great term for emotional intelligence that he likes to bring up called mood management.
Mm.
So what if you just don't feel like it? How can how do you kick your own butt to be in the right mood to do the right things that you need to do? Because we all know your attitude about life and business is that it's the backbone behind how you're going to do everything and how everything is going to turn out. So, hey, Jonathan, I really appreciate that you took time out of your busy day where you could be closing new business and meeting with new people to take time and share this story with those in your fellow network. I really appreciate it greatly. And thank you so much for all you bring to Caerusnet.
My pleasure, and you're very welcome.
All the places we